Isn't it time you got to know your technology leaders? You're listening to Off the Record with GTRA, and I'm your host, Kelly Oakham. So grab your coffee or cocktail and join us for our casual yet intimate and thought-provoking expose on our top council members, ambassadors, technology innovators, and thought leaders.
Thank you for tuning in to today's Off the Record with GTRA. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest, Felix Uribe, who's the Privacy Officer and IT Security Analyst at NPS. Thanks so much for joining us, Felix.
Thank you, Kelly.
Well, I would like to kick things off by getting to know a bit more about your personal story. How did you begin your career in IT?
My career in IT, I began over 25 years ago. I always wanted to be a computer scientist, and I thought that someday I was going to be one, conducting research on computer science for some university, research institution, whether in the private or public sector. After completing my master's degree, I basically became a full-time faculty member at Mercy College in New York, where I began to teach computer science and mathematics courses, actually, for the undergraduate program. At that time, as a computer scientist, this is basically my research, what I wanted to do was to work on graphical user interfaces, how to make new and legacy systems better when you look at them. If you recall 30 years ago, looking at a software, looking at any program, computer program, was basically text-based. The use of graphical user interfaces was very limited. And it was due in part to the hardware. So you needed more computer power. You needed more CPU speed. So that kind of put a hold on implementing this kind of graphical user interfaces as we see it today. I began doing that, and as a matter of fact, I was granted a grant from Microsoft to continue doing that. But I basically moved on after that. When I left the college, I didn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. Well, and then you worked for the Department of Justice, right? Can you tell us more about the early stages of your IT security career?
Yes, the Department of Justice, that's when I basically began to work on computer security, as we call it. They call it at the time, actually. Then I began to work at the Office of the Inspector General, where I managed and performed computer security audits to identify vulnerabilities in systems, networks, programs, and activities in all the components of the Department of Justice, FBI, DEA, U.S. attorneys, etc. It's interesting because it was during that time when I began at the department, the biggest concern in security per se was the year 2000 problem. I don't know if you recall that, also known as the Y2K computer bug, in which people and engineers and computer scientists and everybody in the IT world basically was concerned because there was people thought that computers were going to stop working all of a sudden. After
I remember that well.
Yes, indeed. So it was a very big problem. How do you maintain availability of these systems if this happens? Thank God nothing happens, as you know. Computers continue to run, and but that was a big issue, and the department itself was working very hard on that.
Department of Justice.
Mm. Yes, the Department of Justice.
And you worked for them doing the fixing the Y2K bug in their computer.
Well,
system.
yes, as an IG, we have to ensure that the work that was being performed was basically. Will allow us to be will let us know that it was okay, that we were not going to be, the computers will continue running. Mm-hmm. So we performing audits and assessment on these systems. So we ensure that they will continue to run.
Well, and I found, Department of Justice is, from what I've been hearing a lot lately, it's a really innovative and flexible and interesting department to work for. So I bet it was a great career experience for you.
Yes, it was. It was. I mean, that was my coming from academia, coming from IT, and going into cybersecurity. For classified and unclassified systems, it was a very great experience. You have different type of environments. You go from components that provide services to individuals, grants and programs, and you have the real law enforcement side of the house, is FBI, DEA, so different. It's a very big department, number one, and many systems, many interesting systems. Actually. Yes.
Well, and how about your work with the NPS and the Chief Information Security Office?
Yes, after the Department of Justice, I went and I became here to the National Park Service, working for the Chief Information Security Officer as the Chief of the Security Operations Division. My job there was to basically oversee and develop the assessment and the authorization for the National Park Service wide area network. Basically, it's the entire network that covers the entire United States. And in there, I developed, I had a small group of individuals in which we developed, NPS-wide IT security policies for the actual network. And not only that, we conducted two big assessment authorizations for the network itself. There was a very extensive work because you had to work with basically you have over 400 national parks and monuments and offices, and it was a very big challenging part of the job was that to work with a big network and many individuals all over the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when you were working with you began to collaborate with the NPS privacy officer in the development of the privacy impact assessment procedures and practices. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, indeed. During the assessment and this assessment, the assessment program that we had on the second time, we did it within 3 years each. The second time, basically, we expanded to cover the privacy issues in terms of the privacy impact assessment, to how we can implement privacy laws and regulations and policies for these systems, all the systems that we had, and how to protect the personally identifiable information, as is called in the government, the PII of individuals and employees, of course. And my background as a cybersecurity person gave me a very good understanding of the role of the cybersecurity plays in privacy, and vice versa, of course. A year later, after I began working with her, I became the privacy officer. Mm-hmm. She moved on to another agency, and I became the privacy officer, which gave me the opportunity to bring in my cybersecurity knowledge and enhance my privacy training. So that basically was a marriage between the two, and that's when I began to really focus on privacy.
What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that the government's facing in regards to privacy right now?
The biggest challenge in privacy is how to keep the confidentiality of our employees, of the federal employees and the public, and how we keep the information that are provided to us safe. As you know, these computer breaches are not only affecting the private sector, but the public sector, especially the federal government too, big time. As you know, OPM, for example, the OPM case is one of them, and some others. But this is kind of the biggest challenge is how to keep that confidentiality, how to implement security controls, how to implement privacy controls that will prevent that from happening. Mm-hmm. Yes, I believe that's the biggest one of them all right now.
Well, you're definitely passionate about security. What do you think actually jump-started your passion for security?
My passion for security. Actually, that's one of the things that really is basically when I came into the IT security world, I realized how challenging it was. If you are outside of it, you only think in terms of operational issues and issues that how to do infrastructure, IT infrastructure, etc. But you never consider, how do you keep this infrastructure running? And that's when cybersecurity and these security issues come into place. And that was kind of what gave me this motivation and this excitement. I had a good note to add to that when I went to the Department of Justice after working with the cybersecurity issues there. I was so excited. For me, it was a kind of a very, wow, I didn't know this about IT, but this is great. And the first thing I did after a few months working there was to send a letter to my chairperson at the college I came from and said, listen, you have to start a cybersecurity program right away. This is the biggest thing I've ever seen. This is great. And that was very, very passionate and excited about it. And it took a few years for them to realize, but they eventually did it. They eventually got a cybersecurity program going for the college.
Well, that's great. Obviously, they definitely recognize how important it is now. I bet. Don't you have your own cybersecurity and privacy website?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, because in terms of that was part of the passion. Actually, I began to collect everything I could put my hands on in terms of cybersecurity and privacy and stuff like that. And eventually, I came out. I had this humongously big list of sites, of websites, and information that was on my own personal computer. And I said, wait a second, why don't I just show this to the world? I have all this information that I just keep on my own computer. And that's when the idea of having this website, called Uribe100.com. The 100 is interesting because at the beginning I thought I was going to tell the world the best 100 websites of all times, when it comes to cybersecurity. And eventually I say, well, there's more than 100, too many of them. But the name's still, the name's still the same. Uribe 100, yeah. So now I have hundreds of, of links and websites and information and reports and a lot of stuff about. It's a very good website.
Sounds like a great resource. Yeah.
Yes, it's used by many, many people. I try to. It's one of my passions now. It's like I say, is to just basically spend my time looking at, what's good data out there I could put out there, and so people can see.
And that's URIBE100.com for the listeners.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
What do you think has been one of your most memorable accomplishments?
Personally, I believe it's the teaching, the teaching and sharing my cybersecurity and privacy knowledge and experiences with my college students. I still teach on a part-time basis. I was a full-time faculty member of a college for many years, and these are results you can see, through time. It's bringing what you really know, your experiences, your mistakes, what not to do. And they really enjoy that very much. This is kind of, to me, it's every time it's a memorable accomplishment to me. I give what I have, and I guess I do it in terms of that and the website and many other things. But I really enjoy that very much. I really enjoy that when I hear that students are doing well, that they're using what was done in class, and that's exciting. That's memorable to me.
One of the consistent things that's actually come up today on other podcast interviews has been the additional education that's needed for cybersecurity and really to develop more cybersecurity professionals. So Is that in line with the kind of teaching that you do, or do you have any ideas around that?
I mean, yes. One of the things that we in the federal government per se, let's say, we need. We have already a framework we can work with. It's called the National Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. Basically, it's kind of describing the positions, the titles that we need within the federal government for cybersecurity. It explains what do you need. So if you are a privacy officer, what do you really need to implement privacy at the federal level? If you are an IT security manager, what skills, abilities, knowledge you need to, and that's what we try to do. I mean, especially at the college. Right now, I'm a adjunct faculty assistant professor at the University of Maryland University College, UMUC. We are they're very famous for cybersecurity implementations and programs. And that's what we try to bring. We try to kind of bring that need of individuals, the need of the individuals in terms of cybersecurity and privacy, what they need to make a better professional.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Darren Death, he actually brought up today the cyber warriors for veterans, which is also an interesting idea to help continue to further educate veterans and bring them into the much needed cybersecurity role. So it's definitely been an interesting theme today. You've had quite a few awards and recognition for your work. Please share some of your awards and honors.
Well, I guess I will start with my teaching awards. I really, I put a lot of heart into teaching, as I said before. And one of the things that I really, like I mentioned it before, was the fact that when I was a faculty member at college, I got this grant from Microsoft to develop, curricula for computer science, engineering, information systems. That was kind of a good award for me. I mean, within the Department of Justice, I read many of them in terms of my significant contribution to the DOJ OIG and many others. I mean, performance exceeding within the National Park Service. So one thing I want to mention also, because I'm also a mathematician per se, and I was selected to the National Honorary Mathematics Society, the Pioneer Epsilon, back I was a professor for my contribution to mathematics also.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Wow, that's pretty amazing and very impressive. So you've got quite the roster.
Thank you.
What are some of your personal career goals?
Personal career goals. I believe. I mean, we are in a stage in the cybersecurity and privacy world in which we need a lot of analysts. We need a lot of technologists. I want to be part of those technologists, these analysts, these cybersecurity warriors, as I put them sometimes, to enhance the understanding of technologies and processes that needed to combat, not only cybercrime, to combat everything that has to do with the protection of personal individual protection, the protection of PII, like I said before, protection of systems, protection of information. So I want to be part of that wave. I want to be part of it. That's what I want to be part of it. That's my current goal.
And what are your current priorities as far as insider threats, hacktivists?
The current priorities are to keep all these individuals who are trying to cause harm to our systems, our information away from us. How to keep them outside our boundaries. How to protect the confidentiality, availability, and integrity of this information, these systems, and how to keep the privacy of individuals within the federal government and the public. This is one of the biggest challenges that we have right now, and that's one of my current priorities actually, is to be part of the solution. How we can prevent this from happening. It's happening too often. It's happening many times, and the sophistication is getting better and better from this individual. So we have to keep alert on that.
What are some of your top challenges as a privacy officer?
It is when it comes to privacy, it is maintaining that confidentiality for the confidentiality of the PII for our employees and the public. I mean, the federal government collects a lot of information from the public. We have to keep it safe. As a privacy officer, it's a top challenge is to how to prevent that from going into the wrong hands. Right? We have to prevent identity theft, which is basically everywhere. So it's a very how we can find techniques to prevent this, to identify, to detect, to reduce, to mitigate these events. That's all the top challenges.
Yeah, and on that same line of discussion, what do you think are some of the toughest security challenges government is facing?
One of them is the sophistication of the technologies, and another one is the methodologies used by these individuals. As you notice, social engineering, for example, is a big issue right now. So many of the recent hacks on systems has been by the use of social engineering. So it's a methodology they have found to be effective, right? And of course, using sophisticated technologies. I mean, these technologies that were in the hands of nation states or nations, and now are at the hand of individuals, group of cyber criminals. So that's one of the biggest challenges for us as a federal government is to understand the sophistication and these methodologies to prevent from this happening. I mean, we have the loss of like I said before, of going a few years ago from 20,000 records lost to 100 million records lost.
Yeah.
So that's a big, and it's due to that. It's due to the sophistication, the persistence and the methodologies used of these individuals. A very big challenge we have to keep ahead of it.
Well, and one of the issues that seems to be on the forefront of national debate, notably the battle between Apple and the FBI, is balancing the government's responsibility for the cyber protection of the American public while maintaining their privacy. How are we going to resolve this?
Well, personally, I believe one of the things that we have to do is involve the public. On the one hand, you have, for example, in the case of Apple and FBI, you have on the Apple side, we have the millions and millions of customers, and millions of individuals like you and me. On the FBI side, we have the federal government, which is saying, well, we're trying to protect you, and well, how about asking the population or the individuals? I mean, they have to be part of that. They have to be part of that conversation. I understand that it's between Apple representing, for example, in this particular case, representing their consumers, and the FBI representing the national security and protection of the citizens. But the openness and transparency has to come along with the individuals taking part in this conversation too. Like many, as you know, in the current, many current and ex-senior officials are, saying, well, we need more Congress action onto this, and but individuals, the public, me and you, the entire, all you citizens have to be also part of that conversation. So they have to be bring it to your congressman. You say, listen, I want to be part of this. That's one of the things that I believe it helps. When you have an open and transparent communication about that. And I believe, I'm on the side that, that we can always find a way to maintain the privacy of the individuals and at the same time maintain, public safety and, maintain the security of our nation. We've done it before. We can do it now too. Yeah.
Well, you made a good point. Sophisticated encryption tools are not only found in secure government facilities, but on the internet for the whole world to see. And allowing the backdoors and the commercially encrypted technologies is not going to stop a bad actor from committing attacks. So.
No, it's not. I mean, as a computer, I will talk in terms of that as a computer scientist, and person that is being developed software that understand the software engineering process. I mean, it's not the sophistication of these tools is not in the hands of national security agencies of all nations. It's in the hands of individuals in the garage that can come in together and put something very sophisticated. And of course, in these tools are already on the internet for the whole planet to see. So, that's the other thing. It's not going to solve the issue in the case of wanting a backdoor to be accessed. It's not going to solve that issue. It's not going to solve it. And these technologies are out there. People are using it for good and for bad. It's a way to, we have to find a way to have those technologies that are available out there, prevent them from coming in. That's basically the idea, So.
Agreed. Well, let's talk now then a little bit about the federal government's top priorities for 2016.
Yes, I kind of hit on kind of have three priorities right now in my mind. One of them is to prevent and mitigate cyber breaches, right? So of PII and sensitive information. I mean, we have many hacks already. We have to prevent that. We have to find a way to prevent that somehow. Whether using technology, using techniques, using methodologies, policies, laws, regulations. Another one is that we have to implement privacy policies, standards, and procedures for the entire federal government. So not only we have to mitigate the cyber breaches, that basically once they happen, they can go for the PII or they can go for the information or they can go for something else. But we also have to implement privacy policies. As you know, we just have a federal privacy council that was established by the White House, which is great. And that is a big issue right now, and will continue to be. And another thing is to educate and train our cybersecurity workforce within the federal government. These are things that we have to do if we want to have, we have to want to prevent these events and these things from happening. So good, prevent, mitigate the breaches, and implement privacy policies, standards and procedures within the federal government, and train the individuals within it.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly very important. It's definitely a theme that we keep hearing time and time again is training, and people can be your best asset or sometimes your biggest problem. So it's important.
Yes,
what are your ideas and vision for your work with GTRA? And on that note, you've been involved in our collaborative meetings and being able to, share information back and forth with the technology providers. What can you bring or suggest as, the future unfolds for that collaboration between both government and tech companies?
In terms of my vision is the good thing about in this particular the last year and this year alone, there's a lot of new things coming up and happening, bringing unique expertise and unique experience to the organization, basically improve the collaboration and communication between the private sector, public sector, and within the federal government. So I mean, I will urge the use of these new developments in terms of privacy, in terms of cybersecurity, the issues, the current events going on within. Let's talk about encryption and stuff like that. So these new developments, these new events are happening. They should be discussed. They should be brought up to the table And I believe that the GTRA is a good venue for that, and bringing people expertise and experience together in terms of communication.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate it. We appreciate everything that you share, and it'd be great to know, what you think some of the more pressing topics, GTRA council members need to address, and more importantly, what can they do to help move the industry forward? And we're talking about the federal CIOs and CISOs at this point.
The federal, in terms, one of the recommendations, and this is basically just happened, right? It's, like I said before, it's the establishment of the Federal Privacy Council. With the establishment of the Federal Privacy Council, we need, and one of the major impacts that it will have is the creation of privacy issues, basically solving privacy issues, the implementation of new privacy policies and procedures, and this is a great way to start. I mean, as you know, just yesterday, I believe, the president signed the Judicial Redress Act of 2015, which is involved privacy, right? It's involving the privacy. So we're extending our Privacy Act to outside the countries, right? So we're gonna have countries that we can say, citizens, you can also, we can use the Privacy Act. Privacy Act only applies to federal agencies within the United States. Now we have this new act that basically says, if you are in a particular country that the DOJ will designate, you can actually ask for requests and redress and ask for information about your records, which is a great thing to have, right? So not only so you have you have the establishment of the Federal Privacy Council, you have this act coming out just now. Privacy is a big issue, and we need to address that. And that's one of the things that the organization can do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing these ideas. I think what some of the things that you raised are really important, and it's definitely a common thread in what everybody seems to be talking about. So I can't thank you enough. It's truly been a pleasure getting to know you, especially on a personal level, and thank you for sharing your expertise. So I appreciate you joining us as a guest.
You're very welcome, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you again for tuning in. Please join us for our next council meeting and upcoming podcasts. Go to gtra.org. Again, I'm your host, Kelly Yoakum, and I look forward to your topic ideas, feedback, and suggested podcast participants. So please feel free to reach out to me at kelly@gtra.org.